Hi guys, and welcome to today's task. For today's task, we are going to be discussing vinyl flooring. For this house, we decided to go with a vinyl plank flooring for two reasons. One, because it is relatively cheap, and the reason that I went with this particular vinyl flooring is it is 100% waterproof, so it is in all the bathrooms in this house and it is safe. Two, it comes with the backing already on it. Some vinyl planking floors and even some hardwood floors require a surface to be laid before you even lay this surface down. This one, all of it went down at one time, which was just so convenient and nice. And that's a cost that some people don't look at. One thing that I really like about this flooring also is that it has little latch kind of lips, I guess you could say, latch tabs on all four sides. So when this is in, it is very, very securely locked in, which also makes it very difficult to latch sometimes, especially those tight corner pieces. So the entire house has been finished with flooring. I would lay a room, move all my stuff over, and then I would lay another room. All of my baseboards were installed and ran so that my paint could be seamless, but it does make it far more difficult to lay this floor. It's not impossible, but it is something you need to take into account. I feel like anybody can probably run this flooring in a large surface room and make cuts without the baseboards there. But this last run is the hardest part of all of it. Getting them underneath the ends is pretty easy, and getting these pieces back in is pretty simple. But when it gets to a tight space, I've kind of figured out a few methods that I like to do. One of the options that I thought was, well, we'll just cut it and put cord around. And that's always a good option if your baseboards are already existing. You can always do that. I don't love the look of cord around. I like the look of my baseboards. That's why they're the style I got, so I want to make sure it looks complete. One option is to cut it perfectly along this, but this wall probably snakes just a little bit. That's really not feasible. It's not going to work that well either. So the other option is what I like to call the weave, and I figured this out through trial and error, and I left this area because it's going to be the most visible in the house. This is what people will see easily enough, whereas the rest of my ends end up in closets and things like that where they're not as visible. They do look amazing, by the way, but this one's gonna be the most visible, so I kind of did some trial and error on those areas and figured out what I like to do, and I'll show you that method now. This alone is the reason that I wanted my baseboards painted prior to me getting this floor down, because they came and touched up the other day, the paint, and they dripped all over this floor. I know it's not a huge deal, but I didn't want to deal with that all throughout the floor. Luckily, this piece is actually gonna come up and I'm gonna redo it. Looking at this section, you would think, okay, the next piece to come in is this very next one, but it will make this one almost impossible to get in. So what I found out is it's best to get this piece in first and then slide this one down in. So when cutting out this piece, I know a lot of people can do two different methods. One is to cut around this and measure it, or take a template of it and cut it and lay it in, but I found you end up with little gaps that I really don't like. The method I prefer is to, like this baseboard, create a gap where this can just slide underneath. And the easiest way to do that is to cut a scrap piece, which you'll end up with, and use an oscillating saw to cut the exact height. As soon as I cut through this piece will slide all the way underneath, and I get that perfect seamless look. This is one of the doorways of a closet that's already been done, and I had to go back and cut all of these door jambs, especially because they were sitting on the ground when you install the doors, and I cut these to length just because I knew I'd be cutting all of them back even. But now you get a perfectly seamless look. Now, because this is a transition and I have a seam right here, I want to make this a full piece. So I got one full piece and I shove it back into where it's going to go. Now I make a mark here to cover my tracks and here to cover my tracks. So now that I know where my door is going to go and what cuts, I just need to know how big and how much I need to rip off of that end. So I move this piece back, set it pretty much in place, and measure from the door over. 3 5/8 and 3 3/4. With our piece cut, we can slide it in to place. And hopefully it sits just flush against that. With this piece all set and ready to go and cut, now we can weave in this piece. That's what I like to call it, the weave method, I guess. They don't show you how to do this in the books because I think they assume you are going to be doing this without door jambs or trim or anything, so it's a little easier. This is the method that I've figured out of how to get these done with baseboards still intact. So what I want to do is make sure that these pieces are only within 6 inches of each other and make sure none of our seams line up. This is a full piece, this is a full piece minus 6 inches. Now that our pieces are started, you can see with this in place and this one in place, we have a very small tolerance, but we've made it that way so the floor stays nice and tight and clean looking. And sometimes you can get the board to slide, but it's pretty rare. And I'll take whatever bit of sliding I can get because the rest is tapping in. And you have to be unbelievably careful when it comes to tapping these. Usually you're only tapping just a little bit to tighten the seam up. But since we have to pound this all the way down, there's a really big chance that we can break this. And if we break this, we got to pull it out and start all over again. I have replaced a few pieces because of broken seams because I want them to sit tight. So this requires the most finesse you'll ever use in your life, I think. There's the right amount of hit to get it to move, but then there's the right amount of softness to not break anything or to disrupt this edge. That's incredible. I was able to slide most of that one, and that usually doesn't happen. But now if you look at our door, we have the cleanest finish. We are perfectly against this door jamb, which is where I want this to be. We are tight in all of our seams, which is what we need, and we have gone underneath all of our floorboards and these door moldings. So we've accomplished a lot of tasks. So now we just repeat this process over and over, and it goes pretty quick. These are 48-inch lengths, and the room is only maybe 25 feet long, so it goes pretty fast. The hardest part is just ripping these boards down and then sliding this one in, and hopefully they get as lucky as that one was, because that went really, really nice. Using a junk piece again, I set it in place. And for the next piece, I definitely want to be checking kind of everywhere the dimension I want. And the gap is 1 3/4 inches, but I'm going to cut mine 2 inches wide, so 1/4 inch will slide underneath this, so you have that hidden look all the way along there. And I'm definitely going to be moving this along each time and rechecking each piece because I know the wall is going to snake. So let's rip a piece down to 2 inches. Okay, you guys, we are down to our last 2 pieces. Now, the slide and clip method is no longer gonna work here. The weave method, I'm gonna trademark that, the weave method. It's not gonna work anymore, and we have to start placing them in a significantly more difficult way. I do have room to get one more big piece in, but there's something I need to do to it before I try doing the next piece, because if I don't, it's never gonna work right. So when we started, I said that there was a clip on each side that locks it, and this is the clip that's gonna lock that back piece in. There's a little bitty lip right there, and I take my knife and just simply nub that off so that it's not gonna clip and set solid, but at least that piece will still have something to grab onto when I slide this last piece in, because once that goes in, it's a pain in the butt to get it back over, and since it's one last piece right there, I need to eliminate that little clip piece right now. So what I do is very carefully set my knife on there and take it off, and we're talking very minimal has got to come off of there. But if you can see that little coil right there, that's all I'm taking off. And like the rest of the seams, you just hammer them in. Ah, that feels good. Okay, we have our strip cut to length. There's a little bit of overhang, so it'll tuck behind there just a little bit. I've beveled this lip on the back of that piece, so it should slide in. I'm gonna make sure all debris is out of the way. Sometimes you'll fight a piece just because something stupid and little as maybe like a grain of sand or something is in the way. The next step is gluing it, and the glue does 2 things. One, it kind of holds it in place because this isn't gonna be locked entirely the same way as the rest of these, but it also creates a lubricant so I can slide this one. I need all of these to slide around a little bit when you're laying them, and you'll figure that out. But that last one is critical that it can slide a little bit, and this glue acts as a little bit of a barrier. So I put a dab all the way down. Come on. Set that in place. And the key is to tuck it back in. We got to go in further on both ends and then bring it back. And then slide it into the lower lip. Now, the little tool I found is to grab a putty knife and kind of pry. But you gotta be pretty gentle here. You can't just be getting crazy here or else you will pop things. And just pry it against there. You'll fight each piece just a little bit, but if you can't get it to go that last little bit, One thing I really recommend is kind of tapping it with the hammer as it goes. And for some reason, it just helps those little vibrations seal that up. And that, my friends, is how you finish your vinyl flooring with baseboards installed. Pretty cool. Guys, that was definitely a quicker rundown of how that usually goes. I fought a lot of corners to figure out the exact way to do that, and I think even if you're still trying to do that and replicating it, you might fight them a little bit. Just be prepared to, but don't give up. You'll make that corner seat in there the way you want to, and you'll get it done. A few tools that I used on this project was a table saw, so that I could rip some of those boards down. You don't necessarily have to have that as long as you have a jigsaw, but making long rips with a jigsaw is time consuming and tedious. Some of the coping cuts I use the jigsaw for, and then like always, I use a chop saw. It's really, really simple to lay your own flooring. If you really want to try doing it, I recommend venturing out and doing it. Buy a few extra boxes so that if you screw up a few pieces, which you will, you can just toss it and try again and do it until you get it right and then move on to the next piece. That's what I've had to do in a few spots, and it's really meant the difference of a good job and a great job. And I really feel like I did a great job on those floors, and I'm really happy about the way they turned out. If you guys liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. And if you are interested in a Today's Task hat, just email mytodaystask@gmail.com and I'll give you the instructions on how to purchase one. Until then, we'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys. It's like that bow workout thing. I don't remember what that's called. Anyway, and it's relatively, sorry. Okay, one thing that I didn't think to that, dang. The reason, sorry, that's stupid, I don't want to say that. The first step is to, dang it, where's my measuring tape? Dodge, oh. And we'll see. If you're interested in a Today's Task hat, let's wait for this car. Lunch break's over, so you're just gonna go to work now, huh? Yeah, okay. Some of us work all day.